There's all sorts of things that, but nonetheless, there's this big push, let's be like Europe. And 200 years ago, that was a real temptation. 200 years ago, our first president, George Washington, now we've had our revolution, now we're trying to build a government. Our first Secretary of State is Thomas Jefferson. And back then, there was a real push. Let's be like Europe. I mean, we're only 10 years old, but Europe's been there for a long. Let's be like Europe. And I love the way Thomas Jefferson, Secretary of State, responded to that let's be like Europe movement. I think it's a perfect response for where we are today. Here's what Secretary of State Jefferson said. He said, the comparisons of our government with those of Europe are like a comparison of heaven and hell. Yeah, exactly. We've got the most stable nation in the world, the most prosperous nation in the world. And why is it we want to be like everybody? It doesn't even make sense. But you see, the problem is the reason we have American exception. We used to know exactly why we were different from other nations. It wasn't arrogance, and it wasn't pride. It was just a matter of we have a different source for our ideas. I mean, it was real simple. You take someone well, there's a lot of folks that spoke to it, but I'm going to choose someone who's a fairly non-religious person. Andrew Jackson, President Jackson. Nobody's going to claim he's a Bible-thumping evangelical. You know, even here as a political leader, it was so obvious to everybody in America what made us different that he said it. He said the Bible is the rock on which our republic rests. I mean, it's just obvious. That was a matter of fact. So if you want to go after faith, then you do want to be like every other nation. Let's be like Europe where they're all secular, where they don't... See, this is what has made us different. Now, this whole concept of American exception is something that we've enjoyed for this period of time. When you look at American exceptions and say, okay, it is a different way for us to live. I mean, we are different from other nations, but what philosophy produced that? And the answer to that is very simple. You go back in the founding documents themselves. He goes back specifically to the Declaration of Independence. 45 words in the Declaration. Those 45 words tell you the philosophy that has produced a nation different from all others. They start very simply. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Now, that's the whole philosophy of American government. And when you look at the philosophy of American government, two central points stand out right away in those 45 words. The philosophy of government, not of private individuals or of groups or churches. The philosophy of our government is we believe there is a divine creator. That's the philosophy of government. That's why it's in our governing documents. That's why we say we, the unanimous 13 states and Congress assembled, believe that we're endowed by our Creator. So we believe, number one, that there is a Creator, and number two, we believe that He gives guaranteed rights to man. And that's the start of American philosophy of government. With all the tens of thousands of original documents we have, one of the documents I really enjoy is a newspaper from Great Britain done in 1776. That newspaper in 1776 is the first time that the British have seen the Declaration of Independence, and they respond to it in an editorial. They've read through this, and you would think that if any nation on the face of the earth had any clue about how the Americans thought, it would probably be the British, since we are a British colony. And the British said, look at what our American cousins said in this document. They said that all men are created equal. Is there any more absurd notion in the history of the world than that men are created equal? We know that's not true. We know that men are created in classes. They're created by races. There are differences, and that God doesn't create all people equal. Well, what we set forth in American government that we've come to accept today, that was a radical, radical notion back then. And then the editorial went and said, look, our American cousins say that it's God that endows them with inalienable rights. I said, we know that's absurd. It's the king and parliament that endow you with rights, and the king and parliament can take away any rights that they don't want. Yeah, that's the problem. See, we knew that the governments could take away rights the government gave, so we go to God and say, no, God's the one who gives the rights, therefore, government, you can't touch those rights. They didn't come from you, you can't take them away. So that's our philosophy of government, but that's not our purpose of government. You see, the purpose of government is something completely different. Now, what is the purpose of American government? Purpose of American government? Let's go back to those 45 words. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And here's the purpose of government, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Now that's the purpose of government. The purpose of government is to make sure you have the right to do everything God told you you could do. Any right that God has given you, that's why government exists. Now see, that's not what government believes today. But this is the philosophy that made us the nation we were. And by the way, this is another thing that resulted in protests at the Texas Capitol, is that we have students once a year for the 12 years they're in school spending an entire week memorizing lengthy portions of the Declaration of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And of course, I drove the left through the roof that our kids might go back and actually learn this kind of philosophy. So this philosophy is the central part of American government. So what we get out of this is that the purpose of government is to secure inalienable rights to man. Now, how do you define an inalienable right? I mean, what is one? Well, the guys who wrote the documents tell us exactly what they are. You take James Wilson, who not only signed the Declaration, he also signed the Constitution. He started the first law school in America. He taught students in his law books what an inalienable right was. And this is what he said. Inalienable rights, he said, it's very simple.
Join us next time as we continue in our study of the Word of God. We are located at 60 Bailey Ave in Manchester, New Hampshire. Sunday service time starts at 10:30 a.m. You can browse our website at www.calvarymv.org. May your spirit be filled with God's abundance now and for all eternity.